I know you came directly from teaching to go on this walk with me. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me join your walk.
Tell me about what you teach here at Wake Forest.
So I am Associate Professor of Politics and International Affairs, and I teach Politics of International Development. My second course is a special topics course in International Affairs, which is called Post-Colonial International Relations. It's really one of my favorite courses to teach.
Are there other topics that you teach in other semesters too?
I teach classes on African studies, China-Africa relations, also a class on Africa's position within international relations.
How did you get interested in these areas, both of teaching and scholarship?
I got to spend some time in China after my master's degree teaching English. It was a fascinating experience for me because I had several students who were coming from different African countries to study in China. And this was 15 years ago. And it was amazing to just have these kind of side conversations with students about why are you here? What do you aspire to get from your experience in China? And it just was also an interesting time to be in China because it was really peak kind of development decade. I was inspired by a lot of those conversations I've had with students, and I decided that for my PhD, that's what I was going to study, to look into China's rise as a superpower, to look at China's influence in Africa and in the global south, and to study what that means for the discipline of international relations. A lot of it is because also I myself come from the African continent. I am from Algeria. It was always interesting for me to learn about international relations from outside of kind of the Euro-American context that a lot of IR scholarship tends to be.
So you bring all of your past experiences now here to Wake Forest, in the classroom with your students. How do they respond to that? Tell me what the atmosphere is like in your classrooms.
Yes, students really, they love classes that teach them something completely different, and I think my classes do that. I think my classes try to challenge students to think beyond sometimes some assumptions or some stereotypes about how we think about Africa or how Africa shows up in our media, in our popular culture. What do conversations about climate change, for instance, look like if you were taking, this class to somewhere in the African continent? Students love the challenge. Anytime I speak about my fieldwork research, they are extremely fascinated and they love it. And sometimes I give them the opportunity to, structure kind of debates in the class, to just really open up the conversations. I tell them always, I'm not here to teach you to answer a specific question in a specific way, but really to give you the tools to ask all the questions. It's not really giving them any answers, but questions.
I was just thinking of that as you were describing, really challenging them, having them open their minds to kind of, as you were saying, different perspectives or being in other people's shoes, if you want to say, and then this aspect too. I love how you talked about questioning, having them really not be afraid to ask questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct. That's definitely one of the goals of the classes. And I tell my students, if they come to me and they say, I was not expecting at all that this is how the class would go, or I wasn't thinking about this topic in this way, that to me is my job well done. I give students readings that introduce them to these different scholars and different thinkers. And so in concrete ways, really, they are exposed to different way of thinking about international relations.
So are there ways you connect with colleagues here at Wake Forest that help you in thinking about these topics and teaching them, or also researching them?
Just today in class, I was telling students about just how interdisciplinary the syllabus is, because this week and next week we're reading economists, for instance. We're not reading scholars from political science. So most definitely we need that context, right? We need a lot of history, we need a lot of economy, we need a lot of, cross-disciplinary readings in the class. I cross paths a lot with professors of political theory. There is a class that's taught by one of my colleagues focusing on American political economy that really has parallels to what I teach in my international development class. And I do only kind of international focused. I don't focus on the US at all. And this colleague only focuses on the American context. And at the end of the day, it's really interesting to see parallels between what we both teach in terms of things like how the pandemic influenced economic well-being, whether we're talking about single family somewhere, in rural town USA or somewhere in an African country. There are so many more things that unite us than things that separate us. When we talk about deficit, or when we talk about lack or difficulty or challenge or inequality, injustice, we're not just talking about Africa as a place where these things happen, but these can be happening in context as local as Winston-Salem, basically. And so it's really complementary for students to be able to see different angles to perhaps the same topic. But at the end of the day, it really does show really the strength of our department, in a sense, to offer really different perspectives for our students.
Are there any resources here at Wake Forest that you've used to kind of help you with your scholarship and your research?
There's a Humanities Institute, which is super helpful in providing all kinds of really creative funding to get students to be involved in professors' research. It just really keeps that flowing, kind of open door between research and teaching, and just enables me to keep those conversations about research in class with students.
You just described the teacher-scholar model, right? In terms of
Yes.
that rich interplay where one
Right.
is dependent upon the other, and it makes the learning of our students even more impactful. It makes the work that you're doing even more relevant to society.
It's wonderful to be able to work in an environment where one can really kind of enmesh kind of the research and the teaching. I personally get a lot of joy out of it.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for everything that you
Thank
do,
you.
and I'm going to look forward to hear where your next trip is going to be.
Well, yes, I would love to keep you updated.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you.